Have you ever poured your heart into a relationship only to feel criticized, disrespected, or unappreciated? This compelling story of an older man navigating the illusion of youthful love reveals powerful lessons about self-worth, dignity, and the timeless nature of true love. If you've ever questioned your value in a relationship or wondered how to embrace love and intimacy as you age, this video is exactly what you need. Together, we'll uncover why self-esteem is the foundation of any healthy relationship and how true love is never about proving your worth to others. It's about fully accepting yourself at every stage of life. By the end of this video, you'll gain clarity on why love should never come at the expense of your dignity and learn practical ways to maintain your confidence even in the face of life's challenges. Stay with us until the end, because the insights from this story could completely transform how you approach your relationships and your sense of self. And if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you'll never miss a video designed to empower and inspire you. Your support means a lot to me, and if you enjoyed this video, you can help me continue to spread these valuable lessons by liking and sharing it. At the beginning, everything seemed perfect, almost magical. She enveloped him with sincere compliments and warm affection. Each word she spoke was soft, reassuring, and full of tenderness. He felt invincible, like a young man recovering the vitality of his lost youth. He stood tall. He felt strong and virile, and each gesture she directed at him, every smile, every look he saw, filled him with new energy. He had the impression that love with her could repair everything. Like a rejuvenated man regaining a youth he thought was irrevocably far away. His hands sometimes trembled with emotion because of his presence. She, with a simple movement or a smile, managed to seduce him, rekindle in him that flame that he thought was extinguished. Her gestures were full of charm and sensuality, and her gaze had an intensity that destabilized him every time. In those moments, he felt invincible, ready to do anything to satisfy her and show her that he was the man she was waiting for. He gave himself, completely surpassing himself, seeking to treat her like a queen, giving her everything he had. He sincerely thought that the love and attention he offered her were enough for her to be happy. But little by little, things began to change, and the enchanted veil she had woven around herself slowly tore away. Everything began subtly. First, she made him small demands, small requests that he interpreted at first as a simple touch of charm, like a game, it was said to. He told her that he had nothing to worry about that. It was just a way for her to show him that she cared. But quickly those little, innocent comments began to turn into something more serious, something he could no longer ignore. She gently suggested that he take better care of himself, that he will not neglect himself, as if men of his age could not afford to be so physically limited. At first he laughed, thinking it was a joke, a comment made in a light tone. But the comments followed one another. They became more and more insistent, and he began to feel the weight of feeling a little smaller. With each sentence could not shake off that strange feeling that he was not living up to her expectations, that his past youth condemned him to never again be the one she wanted. Then came increasingly harsh criticism. She began to remind him almost daily that he was too old for her. Every comment was a little arrow nailed in his heart. She felt more and more fragile, helpless. Each word, each gesture seemed to want to remind him of his age, as if that made him less desirable in her eyes. She also began to directly criticize his performance in bed, and that was the fatal blow. He never imagined that things would go so far that the person he loved could be so cruel. Her comments were of unparalleled brutality, and he felt trampled. She called him slow, predictable, someone who no longer knew how to satisfy her as a younger man would. The words were harsh, cutting, and each sentence seemed to question everything he thought he knew about himself. He remembered his first years of love, where he had been able to offer affection, tenderness, and even passion. But now he felt tiny, and his efforts to show her that he was still capable to make her happy seemed ridiculous. Fr. To her reproaches, he fought against the devastating wave of her words. But he knew deep down that each criticism left an indelible mark. He tried to convince her, tell her that her age was not an obstacle, that he could still offer her a deep connection, sincere attention, and moments of happiness that I might not find in somewhere else. But his words fell on deaf ears. She was no longer listening to him, or maybe her words were too weak to reach his heart. Instead, she continued to mock him, treating him with a contempt he would never have believed possible. She mocked his desperate efforts to seduce her, to show her that he still had value, and that contempt that she showed him every day tore at his soul. He felt humiliated, crushed, as if all his dignity had been trampled by someone he had loved deeply. But the most unbearable pain was perhaps realizing that he was willing to do anything for her, the even losing himself. However, he forced himself to stay strong. He wanted to convince himself that it was just a test, one of those tests that life sent him to test his patience, his resistance. He said that maybe if he endured, everything would eventually work out. But each day the test became more unbearable, and the pain became more acute. He asked if love could survive so much suffering, so much rejection. Was that true love a test of endurance where you had to endure everything without ever giving in deep down? She knew the answer wasn't that simple. She felt like this relationship, once full of promise and hope, was slowly but surely falling apart. But somewhere in a corner of her heart, she still hoped that one day she would remember the man who had been the one he had loved and respected her, and that she would realize that love is not measured in physical performance, but in the strength of commitment, in the depth of emotional connection. But each day that passed without this realization emerging left him a little more broken, a little more tired, and a little more disillusioned. He thought that in time she would finally understand. She would come to realize his dedication, of the unbreakable love he offered her, and the value that he represented. But with every word she spoke, every comment that struck his heart, he felt a little smaller, a little more insignificant, as if each word was an additional stone she placed on his shoulders, sinking. He knew deep down that this wasn't healthy. But love was such a powerful force. No, he wasn't the only one suffered in a relationship. Anyone who hears this story knew it. It would be easy to criticize his decision, to stay easy to judge this man who clung to a relationship where he was no longer respected. But anyone who has loved deeply knows that love, even in its most painful aspects, can bind us and make us accept things that we would never accept in other circumstances. Is that way of blind love the one that can make us think that everything will get better if we hold on a little longer, if we wait for the person we love to really see us someday? If you are still watching this video and find these lessons useful, please comment number 1 below to let me know that you are still watching this video with me. Was not simply linked to his youth, to his former virility, but to something more insidious. The illusion that hope, if it was to be able to demonstrate his value to someone who no longer saw him or who no longer wanted to see beyond his age, fought against time, against the wrinkles that marked his face, and above all, against the idea that love could only be demonstrated through physical perfection. But after a new confrontation, a new series of cruel blows that made him feel smaller and insignificant at a moment of inflection that not after has absorbed centuries of suffering and doubt, something in him changed deeply. He looked in the mirror. He observed each welt on his face, every mark of time, every wrinkle that testified to the years lived through his eyes. He read the weight of his experiences, the wisdom that was hidden behind the appearance of a 70-year-old man, then realized with brutal clarity that he could no longer live under the shadow of the approval of someone who did not accept him for who he was, for what he had lived. He realized that he deserved much more. That feeling like a useless man, a man devalued by his age, was no longer simply about a desire to continue a relationship. It was about his own dignity. He had to free himself, so he decided, with a courage he had not been able to find until then, that he had to face it. He had to tell him bluntly, without fear, that he was leaving that relationship. More than anything, he had to choose himself. He finally loved himself enough to understand that he could no longer tolerate humiliation, even if it came from the person he had loved the most. He told him calmly, almost like a revelation, "I'm leaving. I can no longer be here in this relationship, where I'm losing myself, where they treat me like this." She looked at him with a mixture of surprise and confusion, as if she couldn't believe that he finally dared to take that step, that he had that courage within him. This destabilized her, and in her gaze he read a flash of recognition, but also a hint of regret, as if she had somewhere underestimated the man he was. At that very moment, she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time, a slight relief, a kind of redemption. She regained a small part of the dignity she had lost with each criticism she had made of him. This conversation, however painful it had been, was actually the key to his liberation. He no longer felt trapped in a relationship that was devouring his soul. He finally felt in harmony with himself, with his age, his experiences, and the value he carried within himself. The weight of his years was no longer a burden, but a wealth. He thought of all those years he had lived in laughter, tears, the battles he had faced, alone or accompanied. He thought of his heart, of his dreams, of his ability to love, of his desires that he had not were limited to his past youth. He then understood, in a way as powerful as it was liberating, that wrinkles and time were not signs of weakness, but witnesses of his strength, of his perseverance, and of his wisdom. In this decision, he found a form of peace. He had accepted that love was not measured simply by youth or physical perfection. True love is not, he asked, to be validated by performances or appearances. It came from the soul of the heart and from the inner truth. He had learned to love himself, to respect himself, and to free himself from the illusion that his age could be the least valuable. Finally, he had decided to live for himself, to regain serenity and the dignity that he thought he had lost. And although the pain of an unrequited love still accompanied him, he knew that true freedom came from self-acceptance and the courage to free oneself from that which does not honor us. He loved himself more than ever, and that was all. What he said was that he felt a deep relief when he left his house, a sensation that he had not felt in months, perhaps years. That relief was not only physical, but a liberation from everything that was running through him internally, a slow but necessary healing. He had finally become aware that sometimes, to preserve your dignity, you have to accept that some people will never understand the value that we carry within us, especially those who only look at the surface of things who only see wrinkles, gray hair, age, without seeking to discover what is in the heart, had been trapped by the illusion of proving their worth to a person who, by striving to look beyond their age, had forgotten to see his soul in his mind. A click occurred. He realized that he had lost himself, that he had stopped evaluating himself by accepting humiliation. But by making this decision to free himself, he not only regained respect for himself, but also peace. He understood from within that the love that he could only give himself, that precious love, was more important than any external validation. The freedom he felt was not linked to his age, to his body, or to the person he had just left, but to his ability to choosing himself to meet again. The following days were far from easy. He knew he had made a brave decision, but he also knew that he would continue to be the same man, the one who had immense value even without her at his side. He was no longer the young man who it had certainly been, but it possessed something much more valuable, the very essence of love, a wisdom that time had offered him and that he could not be stolen or erased by the words of another person. Her self-love, the confidence in her own worth, was what allowed her to get up every morning with a light heart. Despite the trials, she learned the hard way that any youth, no matter how brilliant, not deserves to sacrifice dignity. Understood that true love was not measured by physical performance, but by the ability to accept the other in its entirety, with its strengths and weaknesses, regardless of age or physical limitations. It was not a perfect love, but if a sincere, pure love, respectful of time, found a deep sense of pleasure in his life, rediscovered forgotten passions, hobbies that he had left aside in the shadow of the past years, recovered long-standing friends with whom he laughed, shared memories, and created new moments, traveled visiting places that he had always dreamed of meeting, and in those moments of solitude or in company, he realized that his value did not depend on the approval of anyone, especially not a younger woman. His value resided in the inner peace that he had. Every day, when he looked in the mirror, every wrinkle on his face, every gray hair, was a symbol of the experiences he had lived, the lessons he had learned from love, the failures, the victories. Each mark of time on his body was a testimony of a life well lived. With age came wisdom. He was no longer blinded by illusions of eternal youth, or ideal physical beauty had learned to see what it really was before concentrating on the things that fed her soul and her heart, was no longer willing to sacrifice to please others, to conform to superficial expectations, had learned that true beauty does not reside in the body, but in the mind and in the love that one has for oneself. This story, this life experience, is a poignant reminder for those who, in later life, may find themselves doubting themselves their worth. Love can certainly be found, but never at the price of peace. Understood that only those who have lived and aged gracefully can appreciate the value of preserving dignity in the face of the false promises of youth and appearance. By rethinking the relationship, he realized that it was not a failure, but rather a learning experience, an important lesson about self-acceptance, about how to maintain our own values and never beat ourselves up from external criticism. He had learned that to be loved, he had to first love himself with all his weaknesses, his limits, and his virtues. By leaving that relationship, he had chosen to regain confidence in himself, to never again allow someone to devalue him, no matter the way that love would take. And for those who read this story, it will be a valuable example of how self-love, dignity, and self-respect can help us maintain our confidence even when everything seems to conspire against us. He was no longer the broken man they were trying to make him out to be invisible, but a complete man, strong and ready to live his life, proud of every wrinkle, of every memory, of every precious moment that he knew how to treasure. This video is especially dedicated to the elderly because they have a deep understanding of what dignity means, and through their years of experience, they know that the true value of a person does not lie in their youth or physical appearance, but in the way they face adversity, in their ability to get up after each test, in their integrity. Every wrinkle that adorns their face is not a sign of weakness, but a testimony of wisdom accumulated over time. They understand that age is only a number, but the way you handle life's challenges and stay true to yourself despite the difficulties is what really defines a person. It is that same integrity that transforms each wrinkle into a symbol of resilience and wealth of lived experience. Today I am going to share 5 valuable lessons drawn from this story, lessons that may resonate deeply with those of you who, at an older age, face challenges in your relationships. First, it is essential to remember that, although it is sometimes tempting to relive youth with someone younger, it is also crucial to keep your feet on the ground and not get carried away by a seductive illusion, as the character in the story learned to his expense. It is easy to get lost in the idea that we can demonstrate our vitality and youth through a relationship with a younger person. But by giving all our energy and time to someone who doesn't really value us, we run the risk of forgetting ourselves in our desire to prove that we still have vigor and capacity. It can be easy to accept critical humiliations that we would never have tolerated at other times in our lives. It is so easy to fall into this trap. However, love, the true essence of love, is not. It must be a testing ground without excessive sacrifices or humiliation. It must be based on respect, understanding, and mutual acceptance. We all deserve a relationship where we can be ourselves without having to prove anything to the other. The second lesson that this story teaches us is the importance of love own. When we constantly allow ourselves to be criticized, judged, or diminished, especially regarding our age and our actions, we offer a part of ourselves to the person who criticizes us. Although the desire to please the other may be noble, we must remember that by wanting to give everything for love, we can end up losing a part of our dignity. Love for oneself should be the priority even before starting a new relationship. If we do not love and respect ourselves, how can we expect that from others? We must first recognize our own value before seeking to be recognized by others. Self-acceptance is the key to a healthy and balanced relationship where we can offer our love without losing our essence. When we lose sight of our own value, we become vulnerable to criticism and contempt from others. Every relationship must be based on the recognition of our own worth, dignity, in the idea that we have respect and affection regardless of our age. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons useful, please comment number 2 below to let me know you are still watching this video with me. The third lesson is the importance of surrounding yourself with people who see beyond appearances. It is not age or physical appearance that defines a person, but what carries within what has been lived and learned over the years. True connection is not based on superficial values, but on deep values, such as kindness, understanding, and mutual respect. It is crucial to surround yourself with those who understand and appreciate us for who we really are, and not because of the image we project or what we can offer them at a given moment in our life. Beauty and youth can fade with time, but integrity, wisdom, and the ability to love only grow. The fourth lesson reminds us that resilience is a precious virtue. Through challenges, trials, and difficult relationships, it is essential to maintain balance and never let yourself be broken. We must learn to overcome obstacles, to accept trials without letting them define us. Who we are is not what life has in store for us. That determines Our strength is not the way we choose to respond to it. Inner strength is a treasure that age teaches us to cultivate, to appreciate, and share with others. Finally, the last lesson teaches us that it is never too late to rediscover our passions and dreams. No matter our age, it is always possible to reinvent ourselves, recover things that gave us joy. Friends, we have not seen for a long time places that we always wanted to explore. Age is not a limitation, but an invitation to rediscover and live fully, to take care of ourselves and find new sources of happiness and inner peace. Each passing year is an opportunity to live more, to learn even more, and to be proud of each stage of the journey. When rethinking this story, we understand that true love is not measured by external looks, the expectations of others, but by our ability to love ourselves, to preserve our dignity, and to honor our life journey. For those who they are, at an advanced age, facing dilemmas in their relationships, these lessons are a call to respect ourselves, to never forget the value we carry within, and to never sacrifice ourselves for the approval of others. Self-love is the key that opens all the doors to serenity and happiness, personal growth. The third lesson is to have the courage to face loneliness, not as a punishment, but as a way to find deep peace, even if that peace is temporary. When he left that relationship, he didn't just leave. He rebuilt himself. It wasn't simply the end of a love story. It was the rebirth of a soul that had been torn apart by repeated humiliation. It was the most difficult path he chose, but he realized that it was worth much more to be alone than to continue letting him be humiliated and devalued. It was an act of immense courage, a decision that, although agonizing, allowed him to recover a form of dignity that he had lost. Solitude, far from being a burden, became a healing tool for him. It allowed him to reconnect, to refocus on what really mattered, and even when he was alone, he took the time to reorganize his thoughts, to reflect on his choices, and to rebuild his self-esteem. He finally gave himself the opportunity to find his inner peace, something that no one and no relationship could steal from him. Was a lonely journey, certainly, but a journey that allowed him to understand that sometimes it is in the silence of solitude where we find our true strength. The fourth lesson is that as we grow older, our memories and experience become precious treasures. Those who do not see that are trapped by the superficiality of youth, by the illusion that only outward appearance and youthful energy are worthy of value. But every wrinkle, every gray hair, every mark of time on our skin is a living lesson, an experience that testifies to the richness of our life. Realize that he did not need conform to the idealized youth imposed on us by the media or society because they already possessed a much deeper wisdom. That wisdom could not be bought or imitated. It only came from the lived experience of the tests overcome, of the lost and found loves, of the challenges overcome. Superficial seeker. One who only understands the surface of things will never understand the true richness that age can bring. Youth is fleeting, but wisdom is timeless, and what many do not realize is that it is this wisdom that gives us inner strength that nothing and no one can take away from us. Since then, it was no longer worth trying to please someone who did not see the depth of what we were. Those who do not see the beauty of time past, who do not recognize the value of experience, are incapable of fully appreciating what we have to offer. I came to the powerful realization that those who fail to understand your worth do not deserve a place in your life. As we wrap up today's discussion, I want to ask you to reflect on the powerful lessons we've shared. What stands out to you the most? Take a moment to think about how these ideas resonate with your own experiences. I would love to hear your thoughts. Please share one key takeaway from this video and how you plan to implement it in your life. Your reflections matter. If this video resonated with you, don't forget to leave a comment below, hit the like button, and share it with others who might benefit. And if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to our channel for more meaningful content designed to inspire and empower. Your support helps us create more content that truly makes a difference. Thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to reading your comments and seeing you in the next video.